What's going on, fish fam? Those of y'all new to my channel here, my name's Austin, and this is Fintastic Freaks. Freshwater Puffers is a fish that, obviously, it's no secret, one of my favorites in the fish keeping hobby, and is a fish that continues to grow in popularity among other aquarists in the hobby. About 2-3 years ago, I made a video that visited my top 5 favorite freshwater puffer fish, along with a few honorable mentions, which I've noticed is kind of the threshold that a lot of other channels and people tend to cap off at as well. Well, today, guys, we're gonna take it up a notch, and today I'm gonna give you my top 10 freshwater puffers.
Awesome!
With some honorable mentions, so technically a few more than 10. Quick thing before we get started, you'll notice that later on here, my top 5 has changed a little bit. That's not that I had bad experiences with any puffer that made them drop. It's just because I have kept other puffers now since I made the last video, hence my favorites have shifted and shuffled around a little bit. And 2, because I swear in every freshwater puffer list video I see, there's always a few people that always ask about, what about green spotted puffers or figure 8 puffers? Green spotted puffers and figure 8 puffers will not be on this list because while they can live in freshwater, ideally for just a certain amount of time, they are better off eventually kept in brackish water, hence they are not a true freshwater puffer. The contents of this list is made with a little bit of my personal preferences in it as well, but also takes into account of what I would recommend to someone that's considering keeping a certain kind of freshwater puffer, while throwing in a few facts about these fish as well as some pros and cons that I would personally link to each fish. But without further ado, fish fam, here are my top 10 plus some more freshwater puffers. Number 10 on this list is the Arrowhead Puffer. The Arrowhead Puffer, also known as a pig nose puffer or the Mekong Puffer, is native to different parts of Thailand and Laos. And if you look at their patterns, more specifically around their head, you won't have to think too long and hard about why they get the nickname the Arrowhead Puffer. The Arrowhead Puffer is one of those puffers that is known as an ambush predator. More specifically, that means this is a puffer that kind of likes to find a few different spots throughout the aquarium, and not always the one that moves around the most. They prefer to find a couple spots of comfort where they just chill, as in the wild, what an ambush predator does is they just sit and chill, sometimes even wallow or bury themselves in the sand, as puffers sometimes do, and wait for unsuspecting prey to swim along, or in a shrimp or a crayfish's case, crawl along, and when they least expect it, bam! The puffer strikes. Pros, I would say, for the Arrowhead Puffer is if you want a fish that gets relatively decent size, they can max out, give or take, around the 6-inch mark. But the good thing is, since they don't move around a whole lot, you don't need the biggest tank for them, especially since they're usually better off kept alone. A 40 breeder or the 55 here, it could suffice decently for a single Arrowhead Puffer. But whatever tank you give them, make sure they got a few different places where they feel hidden and secure. Like give them some rocks or wood, or get some planted areas in there. Just overall some places where they can feel secure and hidden to where, like they would in the wild. Some cons, I guess the first one being a little subjective here, just for my personal taste. They're not the most colorful, as you can see. Their coloration usually consists of different shades of brown, black, and sometimes some whites. Nothing super crazy like some other ones we'll talk about, but that's also what keeps them so well hidden in the wild and makes them a very successful ambush predator. Number 9 on the list, we have the Hairy Puffer. As close as they sound, I feel like Hairy Puffer has some sort of Harry Potter joke to it, but can't quite put my finger on it. The Hairy Puffer actually shares a lot of things in common with the Arrowhead Puffer. One, they're an ambush predator, so much like the Arrowhead Puffer, it's another one that if you give like woods, rocks, plants and such for them to just feel hidden and secure and such, and let them wallow in a sandy substrate and such, overall, this could be a very happy puffer. Also like the Arrowhead Puffer, they are native to different parts of Thailand and Laos. But one difference is that it also kind of serves as a pro, even versus the Arrowhead Puffer, is they only max out somewhere around 4 to 5 inches. The Hairy Puffer gets its name because as you look on its face, it has these little whisker-like looking things on its face that honestly almost make it look like it has a beard. Hence, it gets the nickname the Hairy Puffer. Another pro though, if you're looking for a puffer, one of the most unique looking ones on this list, honestly, and again, are not against potentially giving live feedings, as again, this puffer can be a little picky when it comes to diet. It'll only take meaty foods and sometimes demand live feedings, although sometimes you can train these ones to accept just frozen meaty foods. It is still one that if you're not into that, it may not be your thing, but if you are, and again, looking for a very unique looking sort of puffer, one of the most unique looking in my opinion on this list, then you may have found a perfect puffer right here. Overall, the Hairy Puffer is one of the most unique looking puffers on this entire list. I personally am not a huge fan of the ambush puffers usually myself. I prefer the ones that swim all around and are friendly and such. But in the end, if you're looking for an ambush puffer and a fish that just looks different overall, the Hairy Puffer can be just what you're looking for. Number 8 on the list is the Cross River Puffer. Let it be known, this is not directly a reflection of my personal top 10 puffers, because if it was, the Cross River would probably be in the top 3 for me. The Cross River Puffer is native to different parts of Africa, namely Nigeria and Cameroon. Cross River that you look at right here right now is none other than my personal one. This is Hercules. Hercules is about 11 inches big right now, which isn't too far off to how big these guys get. They can get about, give or take, foot range, which, depending on what kind of fish you're into, can be a plus or a minus, really. But speaking of pluses, if you look at the side of him, this is the major plus. Just look at the pattern. The yellows, the reds, the browns, a little bit of white in there as well. This, in terms of pattern, to me, is one of the most beautiful freshwater puffers you could possibly find. However, one of the main minuses that would be for this puffer, among the many few in my book, but a big one, alas, is their price tag. Because these guys are one of the most rare puffers in the trade, which, if you're into rare fish, that's another plus. These guys can easily go for hundreds of dollars. As you can see with him fluttering around here slowly around the tank, this is a puffer that, unlike the previous two that we mentioned earlier, likes to swim around a little bit more, although every once in a while he likes to take it easy and wallow in the sand. You can kind of see one of his main little divots there where he is right now in the tank versus the rest of his substrate here. That's kind of his little area where he kind of likes to lay down and chill, and occasionally, as you can see, hide from the camera. He's still not fully sure what to think of this thing yet. In terms of diet, they're definitely less picky than the previous two versus a lot of other ambush predator puffers that we'll mention on here, even upcoming here. However, this is definitely one where you really gotta watch their teeth. Hence, you'll notice the graveyard of half clams throughout the tank here. But especially once they get of size, half clams is a good thing to give them for food, as well as snails, and if you're into live feedings, they'll happily take those too, such as shrimp and crayfish, among other things. The good news for you is they usually happily accept frozen foods. Bloodworms is a good thing for them when they're juveniles. Otherwise, once they get bigger, half clams, as I showed you earlier, as well as frozen krill can be a couple of good options to feed these guys. Bare minimum I'd personally recommend for these puffers is the 75-gallon tank, although honestly, a 125 or a 120 would probably serve a little better for these guys. And while yes, this one is only number 8 on my list, again, if we're talking about my personal favorites, this guy's easily top 3. So if you have about $500 to $800 just lying around, this is a great puffer. Number 7 on the list is the Dragon Puffer. It might only be number 7 on the list, but Dragon Puffer might be one of the coolest fish names out there. The Dragon Puffer, which is also occasionally known as a humpback puffer, is native to different parts of Southeast Asia, more namely wild Thailand. And the Dragon Puffer is bringing us back to the category of those ambush predator puffers. Although, while the reason to me that I've ranked this one higher versus the other two that we mentioned earlier is, though it is definitely still an ambush predator puffer, it is definitely one of the puffers in that group that, at least in my experience, tends to move around a little bit more than the other ambush puffers do. Out of all the ambush puffers out there, this to me in terms of coloration and pattern is the most beautiful one you could get. And they come in different variations, some of them with more of a red eye, some of them with a more brown eye, or some with more yellow, more black, some more brown. Depending on what you're into, you can find different variations and colorations of this puffer. You still don't need the hugest tank for them either. A 40 breeder should be plenty good for them, or maybe even a 55 if you're looking for something a little bit longer. One minus I will definitely say that kind of like some other ambush puffers out there is that they can be a little more picky in terms of their diet. Some of them do demand still that live feeding that so many ambush puffers tend to like. Although this is the one that, at least in my experience, as well as some other people's experiences that have told me, that had the most success in terms of training the puffer to more quickly accept some frozen meaty foods. In the end, the dragon puffer's got a lot going for it. It's got a cool name, cool looks. Now, if only it could breathe fire like a dragon. Number 6 on the list is the Mao Puffer. So the Mao Puffer, also known as the giant freshwater puffer for reasons in which we'll talk about here soon, is native to different parts of wild Central Africa. Anyone that's been somewhat familiar with freshwater puffers for any extent of time has probably heard of the Mao Puffer, mostly because of Murphy and Aquarium Co-op. Well, that is also part of the reason why the Mao Puffer, to many out there, is considered the king of the freshwater puffers.
Gentlemen, the king!
Mainly because of, well, it gets to be kind of a king-sized fish. More specifically, anywhere between 2.5 to 3 feet before they're done growing.
Damn!
Obviously, some people in terms of fish size would say that's subjective, it's a plus or minus. But in this one, I'm going to put it as a small minus because in the end, a 2 to 3 foot big fish is quite the hefty challenge. Because in the end, not only does the fish get big, that means obviously you're going to need a pretty big tank. I have mine inside a 510 gallon plywood aquarium here. Not to mention, the bigger the fish gets, the more they're going to need to be well fed. Hence, the food bill greatly increases as they grow as well. And of course, with a big fish inside a big tank, you're gonna need a big filtration system. A lot of people do sumps. You can also do canister filters. I have a pond canister on this thing that's rated to do 1,200 gallons on its own, as well as a Fluval FX5 on this tank. And that's just canisters. We also have about another 400 gallons worth of sponge filtration on this thing too. These guys, especially once they get bigger, and obviously bigger fish produce bigger poop, hence, yeah, filtering the tank can be quite the challenge as well. The absolute bare minimum anyone will ever recommend, or should ever recommend for a Mao Puffer, is 300 gallons, and honestly, in my opinion, I think that's even a bit small. In the end, tank dimensions wise, you probably want something that's at least 8 feet wide and 3 feet front to back. With that little spiel of negativity out of the way though, one main plus that I really like about the Mao Puffer, outside of their amazing coloration and patterns, is, as you can see, he's not alone in this tank. About 3.5 dozen tetras call this tank home with my Mao. Thus, yes, a Mao Puffer is one of the few puffers on this list that actually can do very well with tank mates, as long as you give them enough space and pick your tank mates still somewhat carefully. That, and if you're looking for one of the puffers that are up to the front of the glass, like he is right now, a Mao Puffer is on the top of that list. This is truly like having like a little aquatic puppy. That is until they realize you don't have any food with you right now, and then they just swim away. If this fish didn't grow about just shy of a yardstick, this would be way higher on the list. But again, this isn't directly reflective of what's on my personal favorites list, because if we're talking that direction, this fish is easily a top 3 favorite. And it's not number 3. Number 5 on the list is the Amazon Puffer. Those you confused with the name Amazon Puffer may also know these guys as South American puffers, because they're native to South America, and namely the Amazon River. So both names kind of speak for themselves when you think about it. The Amazon, or South American Puffer, whatever name you choose, is, as we kind of just stated a moment ago, native to different parts of South America. Primarily the Amazon River. I understand some of you might be like, you know, all these other puffers we already mentioned sound cool, but I want something where I can keep multiple of its kind in one tank. Well, as you can see, based on the 4 that I have inside this tank here, the Amazon Puffer gives you that exact option. In fact, they live more comfortably usually when you have multiple of its kind living in one group, or more specifically, a shoal. The Amazon Puffer grows anywhere between about the 4 to 5 inch range before they're done growing. Sometimes they can peak a little closer to 6 inches. Amazon Puffers are definitely a tank that like to zip all around the tank and explore, so they should definitely be given a decent sized footprint. The 38 here is honestly kind of a little small to what I'd like them to be in, but we're working on a tank upgrade for them very, very soon. Keep an eye open for a video on that here in the very near future. Something like a 55 would probably serve a little bit better. Otherwise, if you really wanted to give them a good home there and get like 6 of them and such, which would probably be even a more optimal number than 4, then something like a 40 breeder or a 75 would be good. If you skip to 55 well enough, you could probably make 6 work there. But I would say that if you really wanted to give them a perfect home, I would say then a 75 would be slightly better. When it comes to giving puffers more room to explore, bigger is always better. But like a lot of other puffers out there, even the Amazon Puffer, as cool as they are, does have their flaws. As we all know, most pufferfish have continuously growing teeth, and Amazon Puffers are no different to that. They have continuously growing teeth, and of all the freshwater puffers, in my opinion, they have one of the most, if not the fastest growing teeth of them all. Towards the bottom of the substrate here, you'll notice we have a little graveyard of snail shells and such down there of different assortments. Even as such, I've kept these guys for now about 3 years here now, and it still wasn't enough to keep me from having to trim their teeth all one time here yet. So the one thing I would say here is definitely give them as much hard shell foods as you possibly can. On another plus note though, some people have actually also had success keeping other faster swimming fish with these puffers. But again, pick them carefully because you don't want anything too boisterous picking on the puffers, and you don't want anything that swims too slow that the puffers can bite. Number 4 on the list is the Falco Puffer. The Falco Puffer, also known as a banded puffer among other names, is native to different parts of Africa, including the Nile River, hence another name, the Nile Puffer. The big beauty that you see before you is my 15-inch Falco Puffer, Finley. And while 15 inches may sound pretty big, believe it or not, that can actually still is not quite the full length that Falcos can grow to, as they can get more between the 16 to 18 inch range, and especially if it ends up being a female, those ones especially get larger. And the only reason I can know Finley is a female is because she's laid eggs before, which if you're fortunate enough might be the only way to ever determine if your puffer's a male or a female sometimes. Of course, in mentioning that size comes really the first challenge that can be either positive or negative. If you're looking for a big puffer, the Falco, honestly to me, would be then my number 1 selection. After you maybe tried 1 or 2 of the smaller options, of course, first to get your feet wet and puffer keeping first. Of course, with size brings up the next challenge, which of course is the food bill. While not to the extremity of the Mao Puffer, feeding a puffer that can still get well over a foot, closer to 1.5 feet sometimes, can still present quite a challenge. Hence, you also need a decent sized tank. My Falco lives inside a 150-gallon, and one of the pluses of keeping a Falco outside of the size is, of course, their beautiful coloration and striped pattern. I think that is just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful combination. And sometimes fun is watching them eat half clams like this. Just hear and feel the power of her bite. Yeah, needless to say, you might want to make sure that your fingers don't get too close to their teeth, because especially Falcos, Maboos, and even the crossovers can have some very powerful chompers. But the other plus, of course, is just this. It's another puffer that is very curious about what you're doing. She's up by the front of the glass, always seeing what I'm up to, or just begging for food. But as you can see, she's had her dinner now, so scavenging around for leftovers. It's another one of those puffers where if you're looking for an active swimmer and like a true aquatic pet, then a Falco Puffer is probably one of my top suggestions. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, she's the queen.
Her Royal Majesty.
Number 3 on the list is the Redeye Puffer. The Redeye Puffer, also known as the Redeye Redtail Puffer for other obvious reasons, as you can see here on the clip, is native to different parts of Asia. And if you're one of the folks perhaps that have been watching this video and thinking that all the other puffers still sound a little too large for what you might be able to fit at your place, well, good news. The Redeye Redtail Puffer only grows to be somewhere between 2 to 3 inches. And to those of you that maybe like the Amazon puffers are thinking, I want to keep multiple specimens inside one tank, good news. A Redeye Puffer is another one of those. In fact, it's one of those that if you don't keep solo, you should probably have at least 3 others with it for total. Although, again, if you can provide something like, say, a 20 long at minimum, or maybe even a 29-gallon tank, then maybe, depending on how you aquascape your tank, you could go up to 6. The good news is Redeye Puffer's teeth tends to grow one of the slowest out of the whole group, especially of anyone that we're mentioning on this list here. So as long as you give them snails and maybe some small little crustaceans as well to keep their hunting skills about them, then usually teeth-wise, you should never really have to worry about it. One of the very few downsides that I would say to this puffer is that it is one of the more rarer puffers out there, hence they can be a little difficult to find. And when you do find them, depending on where you live at, their price tag can be a little bit pricey. Nothing like a cross river though. It's not super pricey, but if you get multiple fish at one time, it can add up kind of quickly. This is also a puffer where I would say, if you're looking to get something small, but maybe don't want to do something like, per se, a Pea Puffer, want something a little bit bigger that looks a little bit different, this is the next recommendation I would give you. Number 2 on the list is the Spotted Congo Puffer. The Spotted Congo Puffer, also known as the Denny Puffer, is native to, you guessed it, Africa, and none other than the Congo River. And I know I've said this with a few other puffers on this list here before, but this one especially, I love its coloration and pattern. Just the yellow and black spots with it is truly a striking combination. And especially since they're another one that likes to swim around and explore the tank with that curious behavior, adds just that much more to the positive. Another plus is this is a puffer that's kind of in the smaller to medium range here. They only grow to be about 4 or 5 inches, and that's about it for them. So another puffer that likes to swim around quite a bit, but doesn't get overly huge compared to some other ones we've mentioned here. This is another one, though, whose teeth can sometimes grow at a quicker rate, so make sure you keep plenty of snails, hard-shell crustaceans, and such. Just stuff to help continuously trim down their teeth. Another plus that I'll say is that this is another puffer that some people have had success keeping other fish with. Again, though, proceed with extreme caution, because in the end, they're still a puffer. They can still be very territorial. And again, this should also be done if you only have the tank space to pull it off, while still picking the tank mates very carefully. I'd say a pair and a 40 breeder would be perfectly fine. You could probably also do the same thing in a 55. Otherwise, maybe you could put 4 and a 75. There's obviously a lot of different options out there. It's one that, again, you can keep multiple of its kind in one tank, or sometimes you can keep it just solo. Even at number 2, though, alas, this puffer does have its downsides. One being, it is another one that can be kind of hard to find, and within that comes hand in hand, you guessed it, if you do find it, be prepared to spend a little money on these guys. So yeah, they're a beautiful fish, they look fantastic, and can live in a group, so hey, if you're alright with, dropping $500 to $800 on 4 puffers, you can have yourself a pretty sweet looking tank. Before we get to number 1 on the list here, want to run through a quick few honorable mentions that are just outside the top 10 here. First honorable mention we'll do is the Congo Puffer, not to be confused with the Spotted Congo Puffer. They come mostly in different shades of brown. There's also some reddish variations. They're also nicknamed the Potato Puffer. The second honorable mention we'll do is the Avocado Puffer. It's a puffer that I myself have never kept here yet, but a lot of people tell me that there's some similarities between them and the South American puffers, which we mentioned here earlier. Avocado puffers have a beautiful, shiny, metallic, light green color that makes them very, very attractive to the point where I can promise you someday they'll be down here in the fish room. Then they're another puffer where you can keep multiple species in a tank, so that's a plus. And the third and final honorable mention I want to put on this list is the Du Bois Puffer. The Du Bois Puffer is definitely one of the more rare ones out there, hence another puffer I myself have not kept yet. but in some ways its pattern somewhat reminds me of the spotted Congo, but in the end they both have very different temperaments. They're one that usually is best kept species only. Other than that, there's not a truckload of information out there on them, as again, they're a rarer one out there, but it's another one that's definitely on my wish list. And number 1 on the list is the Pea Puffer. That's right, my original number 1 still stands, and for good reason. 1, because this is the puffer for me that before there were any other freshwater puffers in the fish room, the Pea Puffer was the first one.
Do ba 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 do.
Anyone that's looking to dip their toes into freshwater puffer keeping, this is my top recommendation for a starter puffer. Pea Puffer, also known as the dwarf Indian puffer and sometimes also the pygmy puffer, is native to different parts of Asia, specifically India. While they are the smallest puffer on this list, that can actually work to their advantage, because whether if you have as small as a 10-gallon tank or like me and have something as big as a 75-gallon hex aquarium, you can put pea puffers in that tank. Of course, bigger tanks allow you to put more of them in. Like in here, I have a little over a dozen, hence why we call this tank the Murder Bean Mansion. First time in a while we've seen this tank here, actually. As you can clearly see, this is another puffer that, like a few others on this list, likes to live in little groups and shoals. Unlike a lot of the others, if not all the others on this list, you don't really have to worry about their teeth, though they will still appreciate things like snails and such and happily hunt them down. Their teeth grow so slow that really during their 4 to 5 year lifespans, you really don't have to worry about their teeth really at all. If there are any negatives with this fish, which in my opinion there are not too many, is that I would be very cautious at best with tank mates. While these are a little bitty fish, they can have a real big personality. Hence, they do occasionally like to nip fins, even of their own specimens in the tank here. That, and given the fact that they only grow to be about an inch or so, makes it to where they can fit in a lot of bigger to medium-sized fish's mouth, which obviously we don't want that either. So the more you can have, the more activity you're going to have, and believe me, these little guys, there's a reason why I had them once upon a time, and ever since my first batch died of old age, there's a reason why ever since that happened I wanted to get more, and now why I have a big tank devoted to just the Pea Puffers. They are truly worth it. And that, guys, is my top 10 puffer list. Let me know what you think about it. Did you like a certain puffer on the list here? Is there one that maybe I didn't talk about that you wish I would have? Let me know in the comments below. While you're heading down to the comments there as well, be sure to hit that like button. It really does help with that YouTube algorithm. As well as, if you're new here, consider clicking the subscribe button. More list videos like this, top 10s coming up ahead, plenty of fish room updates coming up here soon, some conventions down the road here later on, all sorts of projects and events coming up here that I hope you choose to follow along to. But as always, fish folk, thank you as always for watching this video and all the continued support, and extra thank you to my members as well there. I will see you all in my next video, fish fam. As always, stay fantastic.